If there's one thing to expect from a new Christopher Nolan movie, it's the unexpected. After tackling everything from superheroes to spies, time travel, dreams within dreams, and the furthest reaches of space, the 5-time Oscar-nominated filmmaker is venturing into a new genre, the biopic. Christopher Nolan's last historical epic, Dunkirk, made a massive splash in both the international box office and during its awards run. With 8 Academy Award nominations and 3 wins alongside $500 million on its theatrical run, Nolan's a force to be reckoned with when he turns his filmmaking talents towards the war drama genre. When Nolan announced that his next film will be the wartime biopic Oppenheimer, based on the life of atomic bomb inventor, it immediately became one of the filmmaker's most exciting upcoming projects. The movie tells the story of the father of the atomic bomb, J. Robert Oppenheimer, whose work at the Manhattan Project's Los Alamos laboratory led to the invention of the first nuclear weapons during World War II. Oppenheimer is based on the Pulitzer Prize-winning book American Prometheus, The Triumph and Tragedy of J. Robert Oppenheimer by Kai Bird and the late Martin J. Sherwin, the latter of whom spent more than 2 decades conducting his research. Who's in it? Cillian Murphy stars as J. Robert Oppenheimer. Emily Blunt co-stars as Katherine Oppenheimer. Oscar winner Matt Damon plays Lieutenant General Leslie Groves Jr., director of the Manhattan Project, with 2-time Oscar nominee Robert Downey Jr. as Lewis Strauss, a founding member of the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission. When a movie is about real-life events, people often wonder how true it is to the actual history. So how much of this film is fact and how much is fiction? Christopher Nolan is known for being careful with his storytelling. However, it's also important to remember that Oppenheimer is a movie, not a documentary. Movies often have to simplify complex events to tell a clear story. They may also add or change details to make the film more dramatic or engaging. It's meant to give us a glimpse into Oppenheimer's life and the creation of the atomic bomb. Before Oppenheimer graces theaters, let's look a little into both the man and the complexity around the atomic bomb and its tragic and devastating legacy.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. I suppose we all thought that, one way or another.
J. Robert Oppenheimer was an American theoretical physicist who joined the war effort following the fall of France in 1940. The first atomic bomb was tested on July 15, 1945. A month later, in August of 1945, came the fateful dropping of atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, heavily contributing towards the surrender of the Japanese military. Oppenheimer's subsequent regret over his role in such a destructive creation came to define the rest of his career. While he continued to see Allied development of the atomic bomb as pivotal to winning the war, he unequivocally regretted its deadly effects, feared its further consequences, and wished the US government had prevented or reduced the death toll by making known the bomb's catastrophical potential. Oppenheimer spent the rest of his career advocating for responsible controls over nuclear weapons and their further development. To truly grasp Oppenheimer's complex legacy on the world, it's important to stop and really dig into the Manhattan Project and the decision to develop and use atomic bombs. By the time the Manhattan Project was launched in the fall of 1942, Oppenheimer was already considered an exceptional theoretical physicist and had become deeply involved in exploring the possibility of an atomic bomb. Throughout the previous year, he had been doing research on fast neutrons, calculating how much material might be needed for a bomb and how efficient it might be. Although Oppenheimer had little managerial experience and some troublesome past associations with communist causes, General Leslie Groves recognized his exceptional scientific brilliance. Less than 3 years after Groves selected Oppenheimer to direct weapons development, the United States dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan. Oppenheimer was married to a botanist, Kitty. They had 2 children, Peter and Tony. Oppenheimer's family was part of the Ethical Culture Society, an outgrowth of American Reform Judaism founded and led at the time by Dr. Felix Adler. Dr. Adler also founded the Ethical Culture School where Oppenheimer enrolled in September 1911. His academic prowess was apparent very early on, and by the age of 10, Oppenheimer was studying minerals, physics, and chemistry. His correspondence with the New York Mineralogical Club was so advanced that the society invited him to deliver a lecture, not realizing that Robert was a 12-year-old boy. He graduated as valedictorian of his high school class in 1921, but fell ill with a near-fatal case of dysentery and was forced to postpone enrolling at Harvard. After being bedridden for months, his parents arranged for him to spend the summer of 1922 in New Mexico, a haven for health seekers. From there, he took 5 or 6 days horseback trips in the wilderness. This experience restored Oppenheimer's health and instilled a deep love for the desert high country. Oppenheimer enrolled at Harvard in September 1922. In 1925, Oppenheimer began his graduate work in physics at Cavendish Laboratory in Cambridge, England. J.J. Thomson, who had been awarded the 1906 Nobel Prize in Physics for detecting the electron, agreed to take on Oppenheimer as a student. At Cavendish, Oppenheimer realized that his talent was for theoretical, not experimental physics, and he accepted an invitation from Max Born, director of the Institute of Theoretical Physics at the University of Göttingen, to study with him in Germany. Oppenheimer had a good future to be in Europe during a pivotal time in the world of physics, as European physicists were then developing the groundbreaking theory of quantum mechanics. Oppenheimer received his doctorate in 1927 and accepted professorships at the University of California and the California Institute of Technology. At Berkeley, he became good friends with Ernest Lawrence, one of the world's top experimental physicists and the inventor of the cyclotron. After the war, Oppenheimer became an advisor of the Atomic Energy Commission, lobbying for international arms control. His security clearance was revoked in 1954 in a hearing during the Second Red Scare. Oppenheimer's old communist sympathies were dredged up and his clearance were revoked a mere 32 hours before it was set to expire. Oppenheimer had made political enemies by arguing against the development of the hydrogen bomb, and revoking his clearance stripped him of political power. The scientific community was outraged at the treatment of Oppenheimer and reviled Edward Teller, who testified against him at the hearing. Along with Albert Einstein, Bertrand Russell, and Joseph Rotblat, he established the World Academy of Art and Science in 1960. He continued lecturing around the world and was awarded the Enrico Fermi Award in 1963. He died of throat cancer 4 years later. While the atomic bomb was developed and deployed in the context of World War II and fears over Nazis gaining nuclear arms, its use in Hiroshima and Nagasaki resulted in some tragic and devastating acts in world history. The British documentary Hiroshima BBC History of World War II features interviews and archival footage to explore the atomic bomb drop and its legacy. By the end of 1945, an estimated 140,000 people in Hiroshima and a further 74,000 in Nagasaki lost their lives. In the years that followed, many of the survivors would face leukemia, cancer, or other terrible side effects from the radiation. If a nuclear weapon were to be detonated over a city today, first responders, hospitals, firemen, aid organizations would simply be unable to help. The reason we know this is that the extent of the damage in Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945 made it nearly impossible to provide aid. In Hiroshima, 90% of physicians and nurses were killed or injured, 42 of 45 hospitals were rendered non-functional, and 70% of victims had combined injuries, including severe burns. All the dedicated burn beds around the world would be insufficient to care for the survivors of a single nuclear bomb on any city. In Hiroshima and Nagasaki, most victims died without any care to ease their suffering. Some of those who entered the cities after the bombings to provide assistance also died from radiation. It takes around 10 seconds for the fireball from a nuclear explosion to reach its maximum size, but the effects last for decades and span across generations. And for all survivors, cancers related to radiation exposure still continue to increase throughout their lifespan, even to this day, 7 decades later. These are just a few ideas of what to look for when you watch the film. With that being said, Oppenheimer will probably be a dramatic and breathtaking retelling of the birth of nuclear weapons. If you liked our video, don't forget to subscribe and follow our channel for more videos like this one.
I like to put my feet up.